How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jason, and in today's video, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Saskatchewan Roughriders and their interesting start to the season. Have had multiple very close games, and I want to talk about if they're pretenders or contenders. So obviously, the Roughriders had a lot of turnover this offseason, especially at the quarterback position and the wide receiver position, losing guys like Duke Williams, Kyron Moore, Shaq Evans, and replacing them with the likes of Darrell Walker and, allowing other guys to step up in that receiving core like Keon Schaefer-Baker take bigger roles. We haven't seen him back on the field yet this season, but he's probably going to be their number one receiver when healthy. Other guys really step up early this season, but the biggest change obviously is the quarterback position where they swapped out Cody Fajardo for Trevor Harris. I think this has gone well so far. I think Trevor has been a stabilizer for their offense, but I think there's still a long way to go in seeing if that truly did make a huge difference in terms of impacting their season this year. But let's start talking about their first 4 games of the season, and it's an interesting start to the season. Week 1, they win 17-13 at Edmonton. Now, this game, I think that Saskatchewan really got away with one here. Trevor Harris threw a brutal interception in this one in the fourth quarter that would have led to a go-ahead score for the Edmonton Elks if they would have punched the ball in from the 1-yard line. Saskatchewan makes a goal line stand, stopping them 3 times at the 1-yard line. So I think Saskatchewan gets away with it here. I think if Edmonton takes the lead there, Saskatchewan still could have came back and won, but I think at that point of the game, first game of the season, Edmonton probably could have closed that one out, and I think Saskatchewan got away with one there, but I think overall they didn't look great in that game. But then going on to week 2, they lose 45-27 at home to Winnipeg, and I think they looked excellent offensively despite losing by 18 points. I think Trevor Harris, this was his best game of the season so far. I think he threw for over 400 yards on that Winnipeg defense, looked very sharp, and that's one of the first times I started to believe that this could work for Trevor in Saskatchewan. I was a pessimist about whether or not Trevor Harris could succeed going back to the West Division where he struggled with Edmonton, but I think this game here against Winnipeg was the first time I really felt that he could succeed going to the West Division playing with Saskatchewan. And then week 3, they play an overtime classic with Calgary. My opinion, the best game played so far this CFL season. They win 29-26 on an interception by Nick Marshall in the end zone of Jake Mayer. And I think that Saskatchewan was probably the better team in that one. I thought that they moved the ball pretty well. Trevor had some good moments passing the ball in that one. But I think overall, they kind of got away with not going to a tie in that game because if Calgary just kicks a field goal in that situation, it would have resulted in a tie. They just kind of got a gift from Jake Mayer that he kind of threw the game away to Nick Marshall there. But give him credit for making a big play. So they go off to 2-1. And then most recently, they win 12-11 against Edmonton on a bizarre rouge that Edmonton gives up on the final drive of the game. One of the worst plays you'll see in the CFL this season. But a win's a win for Saskatchewan. So you look at this. They won 3 games by the slimmest of margins. Edmonton probably should have got that touchdown and took the lead late in that game. Maybe holds on and wins. Calgary has a chance to at least tie in overtime or win against Saskatchewan week 3. And then week 4, if Edmonton doesn't concede that rouge, who knows, maybe Edmonton goes down to the field and wins that game. So honestly, it's just an insane start to the season for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I think that it's really hard to get a read on how good this team actually is with the bizarre circumstances around their game so far this year. And then when you look at what they have coming up, I think they're going to have some real tests. Week 5, which is Saturday night, they play at home against Calgary. So a rematch of that week 3 matchup with Calgary. I picked Calgary on my weekly game picks video, but I think that Saskatchewan has a very good chance of winning that game at home. And then week 6, they're at BC. That should be a really big test. BC has had their number last year, so I think that should be interesting to see how they play. And then week 7, they're playing in Touchdown Atlantic versus the Toronto Argonauts for the 2nd consecutive year. So some big tests on the horizon for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I think that record could easily be 3-4 when you look at it 3 weeks from now, or it could be 5-2. So it should be interesting to see how it turns out for the Roughriders. Of course, last year they went 6-12, very disappointing season hosting the Grey Cup. They actually started that season 4-1, which is why I'm kind of concerned with, even though they have the 3-1 start so far this year, they did start 4-1 last year, and then they collapsed down the stretch. So I'm still taking the wait and see approach for them this season. So far this year, their statistical leaders are Trevor Harris, 1,159 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, completing 66% of his passes. I think Trevor's been very good, especially that game against Winnipeg that unfortunately they lost by 18 points. But I think Trevor's looked pretty good so far. But again, wait and see how he does over the course of the season. And then Jamal Morrow is their leading rusher, 285 rushing yards, averaging 5.4 yards per carry. He's a guy that I think they still need to involve more in the offense. I think they're running the ball a little bit more than last year, but I think they need to make that an even bigger part of that offense going forward. Sean Bain is actually their leading receiver with 18 receptions for 286 yards, averaging 15.6 yards of a reception. I think that he's been a good addition coming over from the Calgary Stampeders. I think Calgary definitely could have used him with all the injuries they've had over there, so I think Bain's been a welcome addition to the Roughriders receiving core. Larry Dean is their leading tackler with 32 tackles this season. I'm really happy with how he's responded with his career after a couple of years struggling with injuries. And then Nick Marshall has 2 interceptions, back-to-back game-sealing interceptions, the game against Calgary and then the game against Edmonton. So those are the guys that are their statistical leaders so far this season. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the rest of their season plays out. I think that this team definitely has the potential to go on a nice playoff run this year, but I think that at the same time, I think there still is potential for a collapse here because of the way that they're winning these games. They're just barely pulling them out. I think that, with other teams that they've been playing in these games were a little bit more competent. I think that they could have potentially won those games against Saskatchewan. So I think it's going to be interesting to see once they play some better opponents that are not the Alberta teams. It will be interesting to see how they play in those games, but you guys will have to let me know in the comment section if you believe the Saskatchewan Roughriders are contenders or pretenders so far this season. For my opinion, I think it's a little bit too early to tell one way or the other. I think I would lean pretenders based on the way that they're winning games so far this year, but at the end of the day, 3-1 is 3-1, and it positions themselves well for the next 2/3 of the season. So I'm interested to see how it plays out for the Roughriders. But with that said, hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.